Hey folks, it's Michelle Metzner and welcome to this video about the cognitive theory of multimedia learning and the cognitive affective social theory of learning in digital environments. Let's get started. Before we get going, let's look at today's learning objectives. After watching this video, you'll be able to relate the basic tenets of the cognitive theory of multimedia learning and relate the basic tenets of the cognitive affective social theory of learning in digital environments, also known as CASTLE. So let's start with the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, or CTML. Richard Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning is structured around the idea that deep learning can occur when words are combined with images. The goal of CTML, therefore, is to promote deep learning, which is demonstrated through a learner's ability to present material in different ways. Now, this is known as problem-solving transfer. One way to achieve deep learning is through multimedia instructional messages, which are a combination of words and images whose layout fosters deep learning. CTML operates under three basic assumptions about how people learn: the dual channel assumption, the limited capacity assumption, and the active learning assumption. Let's take a look at these in turn. The dual channel assumption states that the human brain has two different channels in which information is processed: the visual pictorial channel and the auditory verbal channel. According to Mayer, animations are processed in the visual pictorial channel, and spoken words are processed in the auditory verbal channel. The limited capacity assumption is fairly straightforward. It states that the human brain can process a limited amount of information at any one time. And finally, we have the active learning assumption, which involves learners appropriately engaging in the mental processes of selecting words and images, organizing them into meaningful representations, also known as schemata, and integrating new information with prior information that's been stored in the long-term memory. Now, keep in mind that the three mental processes of selecting, organizing, and integrating form the framework of CTML and are necessary for meaningful learning when learners are exposed to verbal and visual information. Additionally, teaching practices that engage selecting, organizing, and integrating have the best chance of promoting deep learning. Okay, now that you have a bit of an idea of what CTML entails, let's take a very quick look at the CASTLE. So, building on Mayer's CTML and Moreno's 2006 cognitive affective theory of learning with media, the cognitive affective social theory of learning in digital environments, also known as CASTLE, adds the social mediation hypothesis to the mix. The social mediation hypothesis asserts that when students engage with digital materials, the social cues within the materials, like text-based cues, illustrations, sounds, and collaboration, all of those types of cues trigger social processes that influence how learners process the new information in working memory and store it in the long-term memory. The social mediation hypothesis includes 5 sub-hypotheses. First is activation, which involves how social cues initiate social processes. The second is cognitive influence, which states that social processes affect information selection, organization, integration, and retrieval. The third is interaction, which involves how motivational, emotional, and metacognitive processes interact with social processes. The fourth is schema influence, which describes how the strength and number of social cues and social schemata affect the activation of social schemata. And then fifth is the social cue strength, which describes how the delivery method and temporal changeability of learning material affects the ability of social cues to initiate social schemata. All of these sub-hypotheses influence how learners select, organize, integrate, and retrieve information. So let's take a look at the implications for instructional design. When working with CASTLE as well as with CTML, instructional designers should remember that the more purposefully interactive learning materials are, the more deeply students will learn the materials with which they interact. Additionally, particularly when using CASTLE, designers should be mindful of using social cues skillfully when designing for all modalities, but particularly for distance learning modalities. So there you have a super quick overview of CTML and CASTLE. If you have any questions, please email me at michelle.metzner@wright.edu and I'll be happy to answer them. Until next time.